The champagne flute chimed against my husband's glass. I threw my head back, laughing, feeling the bronze silk of my dress catch the amber lights. I thought I nailed the earth tone dress code perfectly. I was wrong. Lauren, the bride, cut through the crowd. To everyone else, she was a vision in white. But when her eyes locked onto mine, the smile evaporated. Her gaze was dead, flat, like a shark smelling blood. I opened my mouth to say congratulations. Wham! Her fingers clamped onto my bicep like a vice, sharp enough to bruise. Before my husband could even blink, she yanked me, hard, away from the party and into the dark service corridor. The heavy oak doors slammed shut. Thud. The jazz music died. Lauren, what are you... She stepped into my space, inches from my face. She smelled of expensive wine and pure, distilled malice. Did you really think you could outshine me? She hissed. In that? I looked down. I followed the rules. It's bronze. It's gold, you trashy narcissist, she spat. I cannot believe you pulled a stunt like this. She looked manic, checking the hallway to make sure we were alone. Then she leaned in, her lips brushing my ear, dropping her voice to a venomous whisper. You are not the first prize here. You never were. My blood ran cold. First prize? Lauren stepped back. She held her wine glass. With a calculated flick of her wrist, she sloshed the cold white wine forward. It hit my thigh, turning the bronze silk a dark, muddy brown. I gasped. Lauren! Action. The mask flipped. She threw her head back and screamed, loud enough to wake the dead. Get out! She pointed a trembling finger at me. You are trash! Get out of my wedding! The doors swung open. The music stopped. 50 pairs of eyes landed on me, standing there with a stained dress and a screaming bride. I stood frozen, the cold wine seeping into my skin, realizing the horrifying truth. This was never about the dress. To understand why I was standing in that hallway covered in wine, shaking like a leaf, you have to rewind 2 years. We were at this trendy bistro downtown, me, Dan, and Lauren. I made the mistake of telling a stupid story from high school. Just an anecdote about Dan accidentally dyeing his hair green before prom. I was laughing. Dan was laughing. For the first time in months, my best friend looked free. Then, I looked at Lauren. She wasn't eating. Her fork was hovering in midair. She was staring at Dan with this terrifying, blank expression. The silence radiating off her was so heavy it felt like it was sucking the oxygen out of the room. Dan noticed it instantly. The laughter died in his throat. He shifted in his seat, eyes darting to her like a bomb squad technician checking a timer. Babe? He asked softly. You okay? Lauren didn't blink. She turned that dead gaze onto me. You know, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. It's actually kind of sad. I blinked. Wow, what is? How much validation you need? She smiled. A cold, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. You constantly bring up the past because you can't handle that Dan has a future without you. It's exhausting to watch. My mouth fell open. I looked at Dan, begging him with my eyes. Defend me. Tell her she's crazy. Dan looked at me. Then he looked at Lauren. He looked down at the table. I'm sorry, honey, he whispered to her. I shouldn't have encouraged it. That was the moment I knew. Dan wasn't a boyfriend. He was a hostage. Over the next 2 years, the walls closed in. The normal world became a minefield. My phone would buzz. Lauren thinks it's inappropriate. Lauren is uncomfortable with your tone. Lauren set a boundary. She weaponized therapy speak to isolate him. And because I wanted my friend to survive, I backed off. I let her win. But when that wedding invitation arrived, I realized the war wasn't over. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was sitting on my floor, surrounded by fabric swatches. The invite was heavy cardstock. Dress code, warm earth tones encouraged. I held up my dress. It was a slip dress, simple, elegant, and undeniably bronze. It shimmered like a new penny. "Is it too much?" I asked my husband. "Be honest, is she going to spin this?" He walked over, holding the invite next to the fabric. "Babe, look at the swatch. Autumn leaf. Your dress matches it perfectly. It's physics. She can't get mad at a color wheel." He kissed my forehead. "You look like a sunset. You don't look like a trophy. Stop letting her gaslight you." He was right. I was letting her paranoia infect me. The night of the wedding, I walked into the reception, my heart hammering against my ribs. I scanned the room for landmines. I saw guests in mustard yellow, terracotta, a woman in a shimmering copper jumpsuit. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I followed the rules. I'm safe. And then, the ultimate validation. Near the open bar, I saw Amy, Dan's cousin. She was holding a gin and tonic, laughing. She was wearing my dress. Not the same color. Hers was dark red, but the exact same cut, the same silk, the same brand. I walked over. She squealed. "No way! Great minds!" We high-fived. We stood there for 5 minutes, comparing shoes, laughing. It was physical proof that I hadn't done anything wrong. I wasn't the main character. I was just a guest. The tinnitus in my ears faded. The metallic taste of adrenaline vanished. I nailed it. I thought, we're actually going to have a good night. I turned back to my husband, smiling, reaching for his hand. Wham! A hand clamped onto my upper arm, hard. Fingernails dug into my flesh. I was yanked backward with enough force to make my neck snap. The room spun. My stomach dropped through the floor. I looked up, expecting to see security or a drunk guest. Instead, I was looking directly into the eyes of the bride, and there was nothing human in them. The drive home was a blur of red taillights and smudged asphalt. My head was pounding, a dull, throbbing pressure behind my eyes. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, the leather biting into my skin. My phone, sitting in the cup holder, lit up the dark cab. "Dan, where did you go?" He didn't know. She hadn't told him. I reached for the phone, my fingers shaking, desperate to type, to explain. But the screen changed. Incoming call. Jessica. A mutual friend. Someone I'd trusted for 5 years. I hit answer, exhaling a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Jess, oh my God. Thank God you called. You won't believe what Stop." Jessica's voice wasn't angry. It was pitying, which was infinitely worse. "I just got off the phone with Lauren's mom," she said, her tone smooth and condescending. "Look, we're all just really worried about you." I froze. "Worried? Why?" "Sweetie, you were stumbling," Jessica said, like she was talking to a toddler. "Lauren said you were slurring your words. She said you got aggressive when she tried to help you." My jaw dropped. The world tilted on its axis. "Drunk? Jessica, I had half a glass of champagne. Lauren spilled wine on me." "See, this is what I mean," Jessica sighed. A loud, performative sigh. "You're getting defensive. You ruined her wedding. You made it all about you. Just don't come to the brunch tomorrow, okay? Get some sleep." Click. The line went dead. I pulled the car over onto the shoulder. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stared at the dark road, the rain blurring my vision. Did I stumble? Was I loud? Maybe. Maybe I am the villain. They were rewriting reality in real time. taking my humiliation and turning it into their victimhood. And in the dark, alone, with the rain pounding, I started to believe them.
I know your blood is boiling right now. Jessica really just did that? If you're furious on OP's behalf, hit that like button right now. And if you want to see how OP finally shuts these bullies down, make sure you're subscribed. You do not want to miss the karma coming their way.
The morning after, I sat at my kitchen island, staring into a black coffee. My eyes were swollen shut. The silence in the house was heavy, suffocating. My husband walked in. He looked like he wanted to punch a hole in the drywall. He'd been fielding texts from Dan's family all morning. "They're saying I wore gold to upstage the bride," I whispered, my voice raspy. "Maybe I should just apologize. Keep the peace." "Absolutely not." My husband slammed his mug down. Coffee sloshed over the rim. "You are not apologizing for existing." He slid his phone across the granite counter. "I posted the story on Reddit. You need an unbiased jury." I recoiled. "You told strangers?" "Read it." I picked up the phone. My hands were still trembling. I expected hate. I expected them to side with the bride. Instead, I saw clarity. One comment seared itself into my brain. User dogs, reading book. To be frank, I didn't even know it was normal to decide which colors guests wear. She clearly has beef with you. She's making drama out of nothing. See? My husband pointed at the screen. You didn't break a rule. She invented a rule just to fail you. It's a trap. I scrolled down. Faster now. Another comment. User content plenty. You're not going to win this fight as long as your friend wants to be married to this nut. This is not a normal amount of deranged. Deranged. The word hit me like a splash of ice water. The fog in my brain vanished. The guilt evaporated. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't trashy. I was dealing with a narcissist who had successfully isolated her target. "They're right," I said. My voice wasn't raspy anymore. It was cold. "This isn't about the dress. It never was." My husband smiled, a fierce, protective grin. He walked around the counter and wrapped his arms around me. "You look beautiful," he said, "and you have something she never will." "What's that?" "Security." He pulled out his phone, snapped a selfie of us in our pajamas. Messy hair, no makeup, just us. He typed out a caption and hit post. "My gold prize of a wife. I am winning in life thanks to you." I looked at the photo. I didn't look like a victim anymore. "Okay," I said, putting my coffee down. "Let them talk. I'm done crying." Dan's apartment. 7 a.m. The sun sliced through the blinds like a laser. Dan groaned, his head pounding from whiskey and regret. Next to him, Lauren slept, peaceful, innocent. Her hand was draped over his chest. Buzz, buzz. Dan reached for his phone blindly. "Mom," he answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Mom, it's 7 a.m. Dan, shut up and listen." Her voice was ice cold. It sobered him up instantly. "I didn't want to cause a scene last night," she said, "but I cannot let you wake up next to that woman without knowing the truth. She wasn't drunk." Dan sat up. The sheets rustled. "What?" Lauren said she was stumbling. "I was standing right there. Daniel! I was behind the floral arrangement. She was sober. She was polite. Lauren attacked her." The silence in the room was deafening. The AC unit hummed. "She grabbed that girl," his mom continued, her voice shaking. "She screamed at her because she looked too good. She humiliated your best friend for sport. And then she came back to the table and lied to your face." Dan slowly lowered the phone. He looked at his wife. Lauren stirred. She blinked her eyes open, stretching like a cat. She saw him watching her and smiled. A perfect, practiced, sugary smile. "Good morning, handsome. Who was on the phone?" Dan didn't speak. He felt bile rise in his throat. He physically recoiled, sliding out of bed as if she were radioactive. "Dan?" Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" He stood up, grabbing his keys off the dresser. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. Mom saw everything. "Lauren!" Lauren froze. The color drained from her face instantly. The deer in headlights. "She saw you grab her," Dan said, his voice quiet and deadly. "She saw you spill the wine. She saw the whole thing." "No, baby, wait." Lauren scrambled out of bed, naked, desperate. She reached for his arm. "She's confused. You know how your mom gets. I was protecting us. She was trying to—" "Don't." Dan ripped his arm away. He looked at her with pure, unadulterated disgust. "Don't say her name. You lied to me. You isolated me. And I am done." He walked out. The door slammed shut. 4 months later, my home office. I was sipping tea, looking out at the rain. My life was quiet, peaceful, until the phone rang. Unknown number. I knew. My gut twisted, but I was ready. I tapped answer. "Hello? You think you're so funny, don't you?" It was Lauren, but the sweet mask was gone. She sounded unhinged. I could hear you hyperventilating, the ragged, wet gasps of a narcissist in total collapse. "My coworker saw it," she shrieked, the audio distorted. "Someone sent the TikTok to the group chat. They're laughing at me. You ruined my reputation. You ruined my life." I sat back in my chair. I took a slow sip of tea. Ice. "I didn't name you. Lauren," I said. My voice was steady. "If the shoe fits—" "You did this on purpose," she screamed. "You've been plotting this. You wanted to humiliate me because you're jealous. You're just a—" "Stop." The word cracked like a whip. Lauren choked on her own sob. "I am done," I said. "I am done listening to you rewrite history. I am done being your punching bag." "Please," she whimpered, pivoting instantly from rage to pathetic begging. "Please, take it down. I can't go to work. Everyone hates me. I can't help you, Lauren. The internet is forever. But we're family. Dan is—" "Dan left you," I cut her off, because for the first time in 3 years, he saw the monster behind the mask. "Don't you dare!" "Here is the truth. Lauren, I dressed nice. You hated me. I dressed down. You hated me. It was never about the dress. It was about you being so hollow inside that you couldn't stand seeing anyone else shine. You bitch. You trashy little— You told me I wasn't the first prize, right?" I paused. I let the silence hang there for a split second. "Well, enjoy the consolation prize. Lauren, you're finally the main character, just not the one you wanted to be." I pulled the phone away. I could still hear her screaming my name. Tiny. Pathetic. "No, wait." I tapped the red button. Then I tapped block. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was golden. Dan didn't leave because of the dress. He didn't even leave because of the lies. He told me the truth months later, sitting on my couch, staring at his hands like they didn't belong to him. It happened at a 4th of July barbecue. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of burnt charcoal. Everyone was walking on eggshells, terrified of setting Lauren off. Dan hadn't seen his younger sister, Sarah, in 6 months. Lauren had banned her from the apartment, so when Sarah walked into the backyard, Dan did what any big brother would do. He hugged her. That was the match in the powder keg. Lauren slammed her vodka tonic onto the patio table. Crash. The glass shattered. The backyard went dead silent. "Are you serious right now?" Lauren shrieked. She pointed a shaking, manic finger at them. "You're holding her like she's your girlfriend. It's sick, Dan. It's disgusting." Dan froze. He looked at his little sister, who was trembling, humiliated in front of her grandparents. He looked at his mother, who was staring at him with profound pity. And suddenly, the spell broke. He looked at Lauren. She was wearing a string bikini, hardly 3 inches of fabric. She preached about body positivity and wearing what makes you feel confident. But I couldn't wear a bronze dress? His sister couldn't wear a sundress? He realized she wasn't insecure. She was a tyrant. She isolated me, Dan told me, his voice cracking. She made me fire my boss because she was a woman. She tried to make me cut off my own blood. I realized if I stayed, I wouldn't have a family left. I wouldn't have me left. That night, while Lauren was screaming at his mother for raising a cheater, Dan walked into the bedroom. He didn't argue. He didn't fight. He pulled a suitcase out of the closet. Zeep! Lauren stopped screaming. She stood in the doorway, suddenly small, suddenly terrified. "Babe? What are you doing?" Dan didn't even look at her. "I'm setting a boundary," he said. He walked past her, got in his truck, and drove away. He left her standing in the driveway, sobbing for an audience that had finally stopped watching. My front porch, sunset. The air was cool, smelling of rain and fresh-cut grass. I sat on the swing, resting a hand on my growing bump. No drama, no screaming, just peace. A car pulled into the driveway. Dan got out. He looked tired. He'd lost weight, and there were new gray hairs in his beard. But his eyes? They were clear. The haunted, hostage look was gone. He walked up the steps, holding a 6-pack for him and a sparkling apple mocktail for me. We clinked bottles. Clink. "I'm sorry," he said. He didn't offer excuses. "I'm in therapy now. Dr. Evans calls it codependency. I was so busy trying to manage her insecurity that I let her project it onto everyone I loved. I was a terrible friend." "You were surviving," I said softly. "But you're out now." The screen door creaked open. My husband stepped out, wiping grease off his hands from dinner. He saw Dan and grinned, a genuine ear-to-ear grin. "Well, look who it is," my husband laughed, sitting on the railing. "My player 2 has finally reconnected to the server." Dan laughed, a real belly-shaking laugh. "Yeah, sorry for the lag. Had a virus. I think I finally scrubbed the hard drive." "It's fine," my husband said, clapping him on the shoulder. "We just have to grind some levels to get your stats back up. No more side quests with final bosses who hate you. All right?" We sat there as the sun went down, watching the fireflies come out. I thought about Lauren. Last I heard, she was living in her mother's guest room, sleeping on a twin mattress, spending her days fighting with strangers in Facebook comment sections who don't care about her. She is alone with her rage. Then I looked at the 2 men laughing on my porch, my husband, who defended me, my best friend, who finally found his spine. My husband caught my eye. He nodded at Dan, then winked at me. "You know," he mused, leaning back, "some people see gold and get jealous because they think it makes them look poor." He took a sip of his beer. "And some people see gold, and they just cherish it. I think we're doing all right." Lauren spent her whole life screaming that she was the first prize, never realizing the truth. A prize is something you win. A burden is something you leave behind.
What a wild ride. Dan finally got his freedom, and OP got her best friend back. But I have to know, be honest, did Dan wait too long to leave? Or do you think he was just trying to be a good husband until she crossed the line with his sister? Let me know your verdict in the comments. And if you loved seeing OP get her justice, Smash that subscribe button. We drop new drama every single day.